Now always remember to wear protection when you insert the D into the slot holes at the back of A. Man, I love this Mandarin to English translation stuff. You always get the weirdest stuff. What's up everyone, Erik here and welcome to Hardware for Gamers. For those of you who are new to the channel, I mostly review and test PC cases, CPU coolers, and PC case fans. So if that is something that you guys are into, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. It does help out a lot. Now what I've got here is the upHere N1054WT. It is a CPU cooler that I picked up off of Amazon for $26 US, or for around $26 US. There is also the N1055WT, which is also $26 US, and there is the N1055WT, which is $30 US. So there are a few options to choose from. Okay, let's go over what you get in the box. There is the heatsink and fan, of course. There is the installation guide, all the mounting hardware you need, a small tube of thermal compound, and an extra set of fan clips, so it is possible to do a push-pull on this. Now the box doesn't indicate anything about this cooler, so I do find that a little strange. The heatsink at first glance looks pretty typical. There are 5 continuous direct contact heat pipes, which is nice to see. These heat pipes are 6mm. Now the white coating looks not well coated because you can still see some copper down at the bottom of the heat pipes. I'll try to get some good B-roll of this so you can see what I'm talking about. Moving on to the fan. Again, the box doesn't actually show or say anything, so I really don't know too much about this fan. It is a 4-pin PWM connector. It has 9 blades. There are these little rubber pads on each corner, and that's really about it. I will be going over the RPM of the fan in a bit, but first I'll go over the dimensions of the cooler. So with the fan attached, the cooler is 155mm high by 124mm wide by 25mm deep. Based off these dimensions, there shouldn't be any RAM clearance issues for micro ATX and ATX builds. Moving on to compatibility, the upHere N1054WT is compatible with most Intel mainstream CPU sockets, but please note it does not have compatibility for the new LGA 1700. For AMD compatibility, it's compatible with AM4, AM3, and AM2. Okay, now moving on to installing this CPU cooler, I will be demonstrating the installation on an AM4 motherboard. The installation between Intel and AMD sockets should be pretty similar, the only difference being which holes the standoffs go through, so check the installation guide before you start. Now as always, make sure you have a flat and sturdy surface. You should have a mat, preferably an anti-static mat, but in a pinch you can always use the box that your motherboard came in. You will also need a PH2 screwdriver. So we'll start by putting the standoffs through the correct holes of the backplate. Again, check the installation guide for which holes suit your socket. Please note the foam on the backplate is what is facing the back of the motherboard. Once the standoffs are in, lay the backplate flat on your table, then place the motherboard on the backplate, making sure to align the screw holes on the motherboard to the standoffs on the backplate. With the motherboard flat on the backplate, place the plastic spacers over the standoffs, then place the fastening plate onto the spacers and use the thumb nuts to fasten the fastening plate to the standoffs. Once the fastening plate is installed, it's time to clean off the CPU with some isopropyl alcohol. Then apply the provided or your own thermal compound to the CPU's IHS. Now make sure to remove the fan from the heatsink and the sticker from the bottom of the cold plate. Once you have, place the heatsink cold plate down onto the CPU's IHS, making sure to align the holes on the fastening plate to the holes on the cold plate. Now screw the heatsink into the fastening plate using the 2 spring retention screws. Now you can reinstall the fan onto the heatsink and plug the PWM connector into the CPU fan header. And we're done the installation. It is nice and simple. Now before I move on to the temperature testing, I'll go over the fan's PWM range. So with the fan at 100% PWM, the motherboard is showing the RPM at 1700-ish, and my tachometer is also showing a 1700-ish RPM. So at 1700 RPM, the dBA is 37.4. As always, this is taken from 20 inches away in an open air test bench. Dropping the PWM to 0, the motherboard is showing the RPM at 1050-ish, with the tachometer showing an RPM of around 1050-ish. And this has the dBA drop to 32.2, which is just above my noise floor of 32 dBA. Okay, with all that done, onto the temperature testing. Now, if you haven't watched my CPU cooler testing methodology video, I strongly suggest you do. It's where I go over the how and what of my CPU cooler testing. I'll put a card above and I'll also have it linked down in the description. So the upHere N1054WT in the 35 noise equalized 87 watt test had the CPU's average temperature at 73.8 C, and that lands it between the eSports Duo and the eSports cooler from Arctic. When letting the fan run at full speed, the average CPU temperature dropped to 72.8 C, so the temperature difference is only 1 C between the 35 dBA and the full speed test. For the 67 watt test, I'll only be going over the full speed results. This upHere cooler had the CPU's average temperature at 59.6 C, and this is really just showing how powerful a tower cooler really is. Now for the 150 watt testing, in the 35 dBA noise equalized test, the CPU had an average temperature of 79.8 C, and that has it beating the double tower Fantex cooler, so that's actually pretty impressive. Then letting the fan run at full speed has the average CPU temperature at 78.6 C. So again, the temperature difference is only about 1 Celsius between the 35 dBA and the full speed tests. Now, what do I think of the upHere N1054WT? First off, I know this doesn't really matter, but that is a horrible name. Now, what does matter is the performance. And this cooler performed pretty well in both the 87 and 150 watt testing. However, this cooler does have some issues you should know about before buying. Starting with upHere itself, and the fact that there is no contact info or company website or warranty, meaning if something happens after the Amazon return window, you're SOL. Now, the chance of something happening to a tower cooler heatsink is pretty slim, but if the fan dies, you will then need to replace it yourself, which is pretty simple, but it is money out of your pocket, so it's just something to keep in mind. Something I have issue with, but you might not, is the shiny fastening plate. Now, I have no issue with the design of the fastening plate. I like how simple and straightforward the installation is. The issue I have is that it's shiny, it's bare metal. Why is it bare metal? Because if you are someone who's wanting to do an all-white build or an all-black build with the black version, you're going to be left with this big-ass bare metal shiny ring thing around your heatsink. And the weird thing, or silly thing, is to have painted these white or black at the factory level would have been nickels, or a nickel. It's just really odd to have left this bare metal when you're doing a white and or black heatsink. Now, with all that aside, this is a pretty good CPU cooler. I would be comfortable pairing this with a stock 5900X or Intel's equivalent. Now, to wrap everything up, the N1054WT is a horrible name, but it is a good CPU cooler. It really comes down to how fussy you are with the colors, and if you're okay with having no real upgrade path, because there's definitely no LGA 1700 support coming, and I'm not really sure what AMD is doing with AM5, if that's going to be the same socket shape or whatever they're doing there. That's still too far into the future to know anything about. So yeah, if you get one of these, you might end up buying yourself into a dead end. Well, that's all I got for this one. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're still watching, maybe hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so you get notified whenever I drop a new video. Please follow me on Twitter at HFG_YT. I also have a Discord server. There is a link down in the description. It is completely free to join. And as always, thank you for watching, and see you next time.